everybody. My name is Rose, and I am here today with Natalie and Erin. Do you guys, why don't you, well, first of all, I can't, how do you pronounce your last name? I didn't ask.
It's
What?
Perrigo.
Perrigo. So wasn't gonna, didn't want to say Perrigo or Perrigo or, you know what I mean? So it's
Yes,
Perrigo. So
it's not
Erin,
the spaghetti sauce.
okay, right. So Erin Perrigo and her daughter Natalie, and Erin and Natalie have been on a very impressive health journey. I mean, really impressive. So I've heard Natalie's story through Erin a number of times because we're both coaches in Kelly Brogan's program, Vital Mind Reset. And so you've told your story and Natalie's story there, but it was always like, yeah, you're talking about this third person, so it was always kind of, there was a separate, a distance,
Uh-huh.
and then the other day when you did that Facebook Live with Natalie there, I was like, whoa, I mean, it was so mind-blowing to me to actually see this kid in the flesh and, be like, I mean, this kid once upon a time could have gone down a really different path. And she's sitting there, you had just done with your soccer game, and it looked like, you had, other kids in the car and you were messing around playing like, a normal kid. And that's just not in the cards for kids, that are diagnosed with ADHD, ADD, and, it just isn't. So, they're not doing those types of activities. They're usually isolated by themselves, even after they're medicated. So it was just really powerful to me. And then to hear you speak, Natalie, I was like, wow, this kid's really bright. And there's no signs to me that you were ever, had any sort of issues. So if you guys, I don't know who wants to tell the story, but maybe you want to just give me a brief or, give me an outline of what happened, like when it started, what you did, and, your journey.
Absolutely. You want me to go first?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So our healing, and she's been this huge gift to me in that her healing journey began my own. So what happened was when she was 5, my dad passed away pretty suddenly, and about a week or two after he had passed, she wakes up one night with a night terror. She'd never had any, and I just had this mother's intuition like, this feels like the beginning of something. And then it was like a switch flipped, and from there on out, she was having terrible sleep issues, night terrors multiple times a week, sleepwalking sometimes 2 and 3 times a night, just terrible sleep quality in general. I'd been an elementary school teacher for 10 years, and she started having these raging temper tantrums, and nothing I knew to do behaviorally with her was helping. It was unlike any tantrums I had seen. It was like she had a hairpin trigger, almost like a wild animal. You just kind of had to let her do her thing and kind of protect her and contain her until we could finally get her calmed down. And at first I thought it was grief. We just lost my father, so I was taking her to counselors and people to talk to. And over the next 2.5 years, it turned into this journey of trying to figure out what was going on in her body. More symptoms started to manifest. She was having anxiety and panic attacks. Lights were too bright, sounds were too loud. She started showing signs of depression. It was December of 2014 when I got serious that I was going to seek some alternatives, because after a temper tantrum one night, she said to me, "Mommy, I wish I were a different little girl. I have a big hole inside and I wish I had a different life." Which in a 7-year-old at this point to me sounded suicidal. Like she didn't want to be here anymore. She had started exhibiting tics like you'd see with Tourette. She would blink her eyes and sniff a lot, and she was hallucinating. She was seeing spiders and flies that weren't there. And I had been doing research and asking our doctor lots of questions, and every time I suggested, oh, I think it might be food sensitivity, she's got really dark circles under her eyes. It's like, oh, those tests aren't accurate. And when we went paleo, he's like, well, I don't think that's healthy for her. Like, I just kept encountering all this resistance.
I bet.
He never ran a blood test. No one really ever took me seriously. And in the end, the only thing that was really offered that was different from anything I was finding on my own was psychiatric medication. And everything inside of me said, do not medicate this child until you've tried everything. So we ended up in a functional medicine doctor's office. And I had mostly figured her out and wanted the confirmation, but she was diagnosed with leaky gut syndrome.
Okay. So, Natalie, I'm going to ask you, like, do you remember any specific incidents, or do you remember how you felt back then?
Well, I don't really remember how I like felt, but there's times that I remember where there's like the night terror when I had night terrors, the dream that I always had when I got them. I still remember that dream. And I remember this one night where I woke up and I thought I saw like a big spider web in the corner by my bed. And so I went and I got my dad and there was nothing there. And then I was in my room and then I saw like flies and like spiders chasing me. So I ran into my parents' bedroom and I slept with them that night. But all I did was just lay in bed and look up at the ceiling and I could just see like rows of bugs just like
Oh God.
going, just like going throughout the air. Yeah.
Wow. That's intense. That had to be really scary.
And so we were trying all the behavioral things. I made her magic spider spray. I bought her a magic spider broom, thinking, not knowing what was going on with her, thinking she was just afraid that it would give her some control over the situation, not really realizing. It took me a little while to figure out she was really seeing spiders. You would catch her looking off into the corner or like kind of checking them out as she'd walk out of the room. And so I knew she was having that visual of something.
Yeah, that's intense. I mean, for somebody your age to be, that's basically psychosis. And like, so right now, if I'm a doctor listening to this, I'm going to prescribe you at least 3 medications, right? At least. So one's going to be an antipsychotic. The other one's going to be an ADD med and probably an antidepressant and maybe something to calm your nerves like a benzodiazepine. So we're looking at maybe 4 meds right here. And so that's a scary thought to me, you know. So that had to be very frightening for you, Erin. I mean, to see, because everybody wants their kid. I mean, I don't have kids, but I know if I have cats.
You want them to be healthy too.
And it's not the same, but I mean, I know that when you bring a child into this world, you want that kid to have, you know, everything that this planet has to offer, to have, to see all the beauty and joy that, you know, it's, you know, that you think is their God-given right. And when your child is like in pain like that and suffering, it has to just kill. I mean, just really hurt, you know?
It was terrible. It was so scary. It was very isolating. I felt very alone because I wasn't medicating her, because people couldn't understand why I didn't just say yes. But her dad had been diagnosed with OCD while I was pregnant with her and was only on meds for maybe 4 months. And I saw the changes in him.
Wow.
And while he was medicated, and so he wasn't on them very long, he chose to quit cold turkey. He didn't even taper. And just the loss of his personality and how much of a like just space cadet and just out of it he was during that time. And I was like, I do not want that for my child unless I've tried everything. So I was reading and researching and essential oils and Epsom salt baths, and I even suggested we do a sleep study to her doctor. I just knew something was going on in her body. And come to find out, the leaky gut diagnosis came from the fact that when she was 3 days old, she contracted a MRSA infection in the hospital, which is drug-resistant staph, and was on 2 IV antibiotics and oral one for a week in our local children's hospital. And concurrent with that, I got a C. diff infection in my IV. I got too much antibiotics during her delivery, and so my gut bacteria was obliterated as well. But when we finally got to go up and see her in the NICU, they couldn't get her IV in. And so they had called the children's hospital to come get her. But before they did that, they had tried everywhere they could, and she was black and blue from head to toe. And
Uh-huh.
so knowing what I know now about trauma and the nervous system and, how our cells hold on to that, that was contributing to some of what she was experiencing later on.
Oh, that's definitely, I totally 100% agree. But I have to say, there was a long time where I resisted that idea. So even like I would think, if somebody said, oh, well, when I was born, this happened, or when I was 2, I was like, yeah, whatever, that doesn't affect you at this age. And I mean, it took me until, I was 49, 50 years old to finally understand that what happened to me and what happens to children when they come out of the womb. I mean, that's your foundation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And if it's not solid, then you're just starting out on really shaky ground, and then, start to display symptoms like a stressful situation will happen, like a grandfather dying or whatever, and that just pushes you over the edge. So were you close with your grandfather, Natalie?
I would say we were
You
pretty
were.
close.
Yeah.
And yeah, we were. And he would always I still have memories of him of coming to the house and us going to his house with my grandma and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
She was 5 when he passed, so
Well,
her memories are kind of hazy about him, but she remembers some things still.
but the fact that she even still remembers is pretty significant, because I mean, normally if it's just a non-significant relative, you're not going to remember much. So
Right.
it's that's a big deal, because where you're at right now, it's like your body and brain are still developing, and I didn't even remember my childhood until I was in my 20s, because your long-term memory doesn't really form yet, and I think your body and mind are too busy doing other things to kind of work on that issue, like, of long-term memory, until you really need it. Like, you don't really need it at this age. So the fact that you do remember is pretty impressive. I don't really know the science on that. I just intuitively think that. So but can you tell me like a little bit of so you were doing behavioral modification, basically?
You mean while she was
Yeah.
Sick? I just call it sick. I was trying to do all kinds of behavior modification and anything that I learned positive reinforcement wise as a teacher, and nothing was helping.
Right.
She literally had this look in her eyes when she would have these rages. Think the worst temper tantrum you've ever seen times 100. And you could just see in her eyes, she would even be like, Mommy, I can't control myself. Like, she, in the moment, even realized she wasn't really able to direct what was going on. And it was that trauma response coming up through her. Yeah.
Do you remember any of that, Natalie?
I remember maybe 1 or 2 times where that's happened, but not much.
Okay, I mean, that's understandable. But also, when you are going through some traumatic experience, even if it's like did you feel anything physical? Do you remember feeling anything physical? Like, do you remember your body feeling more hot or more cold, or anything like that? Tingly?
Having anxiety, things like that.
Well, sometimes when I'm having anxiety, I don't remember back when I did it, when I had temper tantrums and stuff, but today, when I get mad, sometimes I feel like dizzy, or just my head I'm not all there, and I just feel stressed and stuff.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to a little bit of now in a little bit. So basically, when you figured out the paleo, like, you guys went paleo, but did your whole family go paleo?
So I'd already kind of started transitioning into what I thought was healthier, using honey to sweeten things, using whole wheat flour. I like to cook. And so Her dad had started CrossFit during this period, and CrossFit and paleo diet challenges go hand in hand. So at home, we were eating very much like that, all of us. But I was still, before this, we were talking about the pressure of doing this in our modern society. And I had a friend who was also a health coach at the time, before I was certified, say, Erin, don't be that mom. Don't. Her son had stopped being invited to play dates and sleepovers because of how strict she had been with his diet. And so she was still eating birthday treats at school and going to birthday parties and eating what they had there and having snacks at friends' houses. And so even though we were really anti-inflammatory, eating an anti-inflammatory diet at home, she was still getting gluten, she was still getting dairy, she was still getting food coloring. And we know now from the science that even a tiny bit of gluten can affect you significantly.
Right.
And so after her follow-up visit with her functional medicine doctor, when we got all the lab reports back and she confirmed what we thought was going on, I knew what to do immediately. So instantaneously, I was like, okay, you are paleo 24/7. And when you're that little, she was in second grade at the time.
Yeah.
Which is the age of my son now. That's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Also, let's not forget the fact you have 3 kids.
Yeah, she's the middle one.
Right. So it's not like this is an only child that you're giving all, pampering. You actually have 3 kids.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I did things like bake cupcakes she could have and keep them in the freezer, and she would take those to birthday parties, or I would find out ahead of time what they were having, and if they were having, a certain kind of food, I would try to duplicate it to the best of my ability for her. We kept, Enjoy Life is a brand that's, non-allergens, free of the top 8 allergens. We would keep those treats at school for treats and birthday parties, and I was making food and taking food everywhere we went. And now it's a little different. She's making more of her own choices since she's in middle school.
Yeah.
But she's learned a couple of lessons. We've had a lot of discussions because I realize I cannot be on top of her all the time. And it's her journey. She'll have to learn. But she's felt pretty darn bad a couple of times this school year. And we've had discussions. How do you feel? How do you feel in your body? Do you feel grounded? Do you feel calm? And she's had a couple of anxiety attacks in the last year, and from food choices and from stress. So we still pay really close attention to that.
Yeah, and which is understandable. So that was a question I actually asked the social worker that works in I think she works for the state, in the public aid or whatever. And I said, what would you ask somebody that chose not to go on medication and instead, which I believe that both, you're stable, Natalie. Yeah, I think, I don't know. Are you okay? So, what you guys did was the first question. And has there been any relapse? And if so, what do you do about relapse?
So one of the other things we did was neurofeedback, which is brainwave biofeedback at the time. And her therapist told us that when she hit puberty, that we might need to come back. Just all the hormonal changes and all of that can affect brain chemistry and brainwave patterns. So she's been back to neurofeedback, and we're kind of revamping, checking in, kind of cleaning some things up, because she was noticing starting middle school, some more anxiety around homework. When she gets triggered by food or even really stressful situations, she can notice that she reacts really strongly to things still.
Okay.
So there haven't been any long-term relapses, but we've had a couple of long weekends or a couple of days where she hasn't felt very good, and we just have to clean up what we're doing and go back to focusing on stress reduction, breath work, mindfulness, things like that.
So Natalie, as a 12-year-old girl, how do you feel? What is it like for you to be? How many other kids are doing practicing these, mindfulness and breath work and doing paleo at school?
I don't know many people that necessarily like do paleo diets. Some of my friends do eat pretty healthy though.
That's good.
So yeah.
There are quite a few kids that all of the kids know that are either gluten-free or dairy-free, maybe not paleo fully, but are on some kind of modified diet for some sensitivity. Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. Do they have the understanding that you have, Erin, or are they just? Is it?
No, not necessarily. Like
Yeah.
I know a mom that her daughter is gluten-free, and our school district will make special meals for those kids.
Uh-huh.
And I refuse to order them because they're still
Yeah.
chemical
Yeah.
form of just it's processed food. It's just gluten-free processed food. And so there's kind of this, oh, but it's gluten-free. That must mean it's good for you.
All right.
And so I fight that, well, no, just because it's gluten-free doesn't mean it's good for you. Just because it's dairy-free doesn't mean it's good for you. And so the depth of understanding, I don't think is there in all cases, but I run into a lot of moms that are on this path now. They're
Oh,
starting to
wow.
question how they're feeding their families and what they're eating. And so it's becoming more and more common.
Wow, that's really impressive. And you live in Kansas City?
Uh-huh. Overland Park, which is
So
in
yeah,
Iowa.
you're not in a big city where it's, yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really, really good to hear. So for you, Natalie, you're on the front lines, basically, out there with the kids. So I'm glad to hear that you have, other kids that are on the same diet as you and stuff. But I'm sure there's friends that are a lot of friends that probably go to Starbucks that, not poke fun, but maybe make you feel a little bad for your lifestyle choices. Do you find that?
Yeah.
Yeah?
What are some things that
Yeah,
get
give me an example.
Like like just when there's like treats at school or there's a party that I go to and they're like, well, why can't you have it just this one time? And like because when I say I'm not allergic to it, I'm just sensitive to it. So they always ask, well, why can't you just have a little bit? And I say because I'm still really sensitive to it. So and it's like just a little bit still makes me stressed and stuff like that
Right.
sometimes.
So
Yeah.
can you explain to me what happens when you, like, let's say you eat something or you're not getting enough sleep? Like, what are your triggers? What?
Um, well, I can get really stressed from like homework or just like a test or just like stuff at school that shouldn't really stress me out normally. And sometimes things can make me mad
Okay.
like more easily than they usually would. Or like I just feel ungrounded.
Yeah. So when you say you don't like perform on your homework as well, does it become overwhelming? Is it like you can't comprehend it, or is it, or you don't have time for it? It's you just don't have the patience, or is it all of that?
think back to the Super Bowl math homework? How did you feel?
Yeah, it's sometimes I just feel like I don't like I just can't. I'm tired and I just can't go anymore, and I just kind of give up on it, and it seems harder than it really is, and just like it's a really big deal, but it's not that big of a deal.
But okay, so normally you have no problem doing the math or whatever the subject.
Yeah.
Smart cookie.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, most kids are very smart. And I really do think that we're clogging our brains up with like junk. And it's, like really sort of putting a damper on our intelligence. And it's,
Well, and having been an elementary school teacher, one of the biggest things for her is food coloring.
wow.
Like she's really sensitive to chemicals, to preservatives and things like that in general. But I wish I could go back to my fifth grade classroom. And I was always the teacher that was like, really, you want to medicate him? Let's put a tennis ball on the back of his chair and just let him wiggle during the day and see if that helps. Like I was all for behavioral interventions even back then. But I wish I could go back and say, hey, let's try no food coloring for a couple weeks and see what happens, because I can tell when she walks through the door at the end of the day from school if she's had it during the day or not.
Oh, wow.
That strongly and that quickly.
Wow. So it's food, I don't run into a lot of food coloring because I'm an adult, and, our foods aren't dyed red and green and have sprinkles on it. And if you're still an adult eating that, it's like it's not very adult like. But
Well,
kids, that's
most
they,
packaged products,
yeah,
most processed food has some food coloring in it. Even vanilla ice cream has blue food coloring in it.
really.
Because it's not naturally white, so they have to counterbalance to make it look like you expect it to look. So it's hiding in everything.
Yeah. That's why you can't you have to make everything yourself. That's really that's like, and
It's
then it's hard to sort of that was my next question. Like, is your mom good at making those, like when like duplicating those treats that you're getting at school?
Yeah, she is. And
Oh.
sometimes like stuff that she makes, it still tastes like the normal thing. Like a lot of my friends that have tried like gluten-free stuff think that it's not, they don't even realize that it's gluten-free, and my mom can make it taste like normal.
I've gotten kids
Not
to
much.
try salmon patties and kombucha and all kinds of random things they wouldn't normally have.
That's really impressive. I gotta say, that really is, because that's the biggest thing. Like, I've talked to other parents about, I'm like, maybe you should try this, this diet. And they just, first of all, because I don't have kids, I don't get any respect, period, because you don't understand. You don't understand what it's like. You don't know. You can't do that to kids, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, because when I go into a restaurant or anywhere and look at the kids menu, I want to cry. I just want to cry.
We're one of the only countries in the world that has a kids menu. Everywhere else in the world, kids eat what adults eat. And so that's just kind of been what it's been at our house. I'm not a short order cook. And that's a lot of the reason why the whole family changed, because I knew it would be good for everybody, and because I don't have the time or energy to make 3 different meals for everybody. But it was a transition. And my youngest, he's 8 now. He was, oh gosh, he would have been, he was like, we were 7, so he was like 3 when we transitioned our diet.
Uh-huh.
And he's the best eater out of the 3 of them, because he's been exposed to Brussels sprouts and asparagus and all of these things. Now, he was a perfect eater until he went to kindergarten and went to the school cafeteria, and he came home, Mom, can I have an Uncrustables? Can I have a Lunchables? And I'm like, no. So I will make my own versions of things, or, I always would serve things that I knew they would eat along with things they hadn't had before.
Uh-huh.
And I think a lot of parents don't realize it can take, their taste buds are more sensitive than ours are. They detect bitter taste, which, hello, that's vegetables. So we had a no thank you bite rule. They had to take a bite of everything, and then they could say no thank you. And then that was exposure, so they could get used to the taste of whatever it was. And I've won them over on a lot of things by doing that.
That's awesome. What are some of your favorite foods, Natalie?
I like Mexican food. My mom makes fajitas, and we have taco nights and stuff. And that's probably my favorite thing that we eat.
Nice. That's really nice. That's really cool. Yeah, I mean, I don't know where people get this idea that we're just eating, lettuce and,
No, it can look lots of different ways.
Green smoothies that taste like, broccoli rabe.
Well, and I think being a holistic health coach, that's what a lot of people think about getting healthy, is they're going to be eating rabbit food with no taste.
Right.
And working with Dr. Brogan, that there's so much variety to what we get to have. And my kids eat a lot more fat than a lot of other kids. I've had moms, what do you eat? How do you feed your kids? There was a soccer game oh gosh, probably 3 or 4 years ago. And I was like, well, I do this and this and this. And it was a lot of like protein balls and things I was explaining to them. And this one mom turned to the other one. She goes, that's great for them, but my kids snack too much. They need and she started talking about all of the crackers and the different carb
Right.
loaded things that they eat. And my kids have shifted to where they, you don't need to eat as much of the nutrient dense stuff because it's more nourishing, more satiating. And so there's still a lot of misunderstanding around what it looks like to eat healthy, and that's different for every person, that it's not the same for everybody.
I agree, and it's different for somebody that's 8 years old and somebody that's 12 years old and somebody that's 50 and 35. I'm guessing that's how old you are, right?
Oh, bless you. Actually, I'm 42.
42. And and I mean it is. It's different for whatever stage you're at in life. And your body can tolerate different things. I think as you get older, you can't have big meals and stuff like that. When you're a kid, you need big meals. So speaking of that, I'm sure you have a very big appetite, Natalie, because I know you're an athlete. And so tell me a little bit about that. So I just have a feeling that, like if you were still in that state that you were in when you were 5 and 6 and 7 years old, you wouldn't be as, you're not only an athlete, but I guess you're very social as well. So like you have a full normal life, not just a life like, oh, we're just barely getting by, not being sick. We're living, we're thriving. So can you tell me a little bit about like what is a day in the life like for Natalie?
Like today,
Like
or pick a soccer practice day. What's that look like?
like how I eat.
No, just your whole. What do you do?
What do you do? What do you go through? What do you do during the day?
Well, I go to school and then I do my homework, and then sometimes I go on my phone. Well, I go on my phone a lot, and but sometimes I like to go outside, and like at my dad's house we have a kickback goal in our backyard. So I like to do that, and here at my mom's house I like to play with our cat, and like play. Sometimes I play like Nerf gun wars with my brother and stuff like that, and I watch TV too.
Right.
Like favorite TV show.
And you're on a sports team?
Soccer.
So you play soccer and you have
Yeah.
friends. You have a lot of friends. You do?
Yeah.
So that's good. And then also,
Which is far different than it used to be when she was going through all of this.
Yeah.
Social relationships were very difficult. She would we lived on a street with lots of kids, and she would go down the street to play with the little girls down the street and be home 10 minutes later and run upstairs and slam the door, and I couldn't get her to talk to me. And they would come over, and I, just witnessing these teeny tiny things kids go through, like deciding whose Barbie is in charge of this or that at that age. Those were the things she was playing, and it would turn into these huge blow-ups and huge ordeals. And so it was hard watching her in situations with other kids and other people because you couldn't see what was going on with her. It wasn't this visible thing. It was all in her brain and inflammation in her body. And as her mom, it just broke my heart because there were kind of some opinions formed of her based on her behavior, and then people question your parenting and are you doing it correctly, and you're like, no, there's something going on with her.
right.
And so that was hard, but it's much better now. Yeah, she has lots of friends.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that's really good because a lot of times what happens to kids that they never really they're sort of antisocial and they don't have a lot of friends, and it's really sad. Because we need that social, we need that mirroring from our peers, and to figure out those little Barbie fights and stuff like that. I mean, they're not the end of the world, and when you're in that state like she was in, it almost seems like the end of the world. Like,
And I was just kind of like, okay, if we can't even work through Barbie fights, how are we going to get through the rest of life? And how is she ever going to make decisions? And at a certain point, I thought she was going to be living with me for the rest of her life, that I would be taking care of her. It was that bad.
Wow. Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, that is just amazing to hear that and then, compare that to this kid sitting in front of me that is on camera and like wanted to do this interview and is like, yeah, and I hear you also want to start a YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be so cool. I really do. I mean, you could just do it. I was telling your mom, like, just do it about your life. Like one day do it about soccer, the next day, or, a couple days later, do it about like some, lifestyle thing you're doing or whatever. Cause there's not a lot of kids out there, talking about what it's like to be, in the sort of situation that you're in. So, and it's really, I mean, you're an all-American girl, and like, this is the new all-American girl to me.
Yep.
Like this healthy, sort of, very, aware, very mindful, human being.
And she's very sensitive, very empathic. So like we talk about that and kind of work on that as well. My little warrior girl.
Explain that to me when you say we talk about that and work on. Is it like too much or is it?
It was at first. She's just, I think she was taking on a lot of the emotion after my father died as well, picking up on it from other people. And she's just very sensitive to other people's energies and can feel what's going on with them. For example, it's been a couple years ago, but my dad passed in 2012, so it's been several years, and his birthday is September 11th, and he passed on September 12th. And so it's very hard to separate his birthday from the anniversary of his passing. And
Right.
a couple of years ago, I'm like, I'm doing okay. I'm all right. I get up, I'm making school lunches, I'm in the kitchen, I'm fine. I hadn't said anything about it to the kids. And she comes downstairs and she stands by me for a minute and she looks at me and she's like, Mommy, why are you so sad today? She just knew.
Wow.
Like she could feel it. So she's very sensitive
Wow.
that way. So we've had to
Sense.
talk a lot about what belongs to her, what belongs to other people, kind of identifying, is this a feeling I'm having or is this something someone else is feeling around me? She's very sensitive to animals. She's very sensitive when people are hurting or in pain. So
That is really, really intense. So picking up the energy of, the stuff around you is a real thing. And I didn't even realize that that was happening all these years until about a year ago. And I didn't know what was happening. I'm like, why am I feeling, I'd go out and I'd see something and I would just be like carrying it with me throughout the whole day. And it is really a real thing. And it's not, it's not honored. It's mostly like, oh, just get over it, go home, do whatever, just get through, drive from point A to point B without being affected. Or, and it's just impossible. So, I mean, it's really, really important that you honor that. And it doesn't have to take over your life. And I think once you give it, acknowledge it and give it a voice, that it doesn't, like, it's not so strong anymore. It doesn't, like, take over.
yeah, just being aware of it has helped her quite a bit.
Yeah. It's really cool. I mean, that's a special gift you have. It really is. So I don't know if you want to hear that. It's like, yeah, I got enough gifts here.
She gets it from me all the time. It's her superpower.
Right.
I grew up hearing how sensitive I was. You're too sensitive. You're too emotional. You just need like all the things you were saying in this family of people that were totally cut off from how they felt. And so, like I said at the beginning, her healing journey was kind of the beginning of my healing journey. And in many ways, we've been learning about ourselves side by side. And
yeah, that's
we
super.
started eating better. I started feeling better, and the depression and anxiety that I had experienced in my life started to dissipate. And I was like, whoa, there's really something to this.
Really?
Yeah.
So, have you noticed that your other kids are they do they follow the paleo diet as well? Pretty much, probably, right?
It's harder with my high schooler.
Right. Well,
She
yeah.
has many choices. She's at soccer practice. We've dealt with some things this year. She's been such an easy kid and such smooth sailing, typical firstborn, always on top of things. And this first year of high school has been kind of tough for her. And so she hears me talk about Dr. Brogan and VMR all the time. She hears me talk about my coaching clients all the time. And what I'm reading, I share with them and all of that. But she's figuring it out for herself.
Good.
Doesn't always follow along in the way that she knows is best. And the thing about, she plays soccer as well. So we've had a lot of conversations about, you didn't feel very energetic during that game. How are you taking care of yourself before that?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Mom, I didn't drink enough water. I should have gone to bed earlier. I didn't eat very well at lunch today. So she is starting to be able to identify it, but it's a learning curve. Like, you can only control what they eat.
That's one thing I wanted to ask you, Natalie. Do you notice anything about sleep? Is that like an important aspect to your to your overall health?
Yeah, I feel like if I don't get enough sleep, then I just don't function as well the next day, or for like many days after. I just I'm not as like awake, or just like grounded and
More sensitive.
Yeah, I'm more sensitive and cranky, and just can't like do stuff as well that day.
Wow. So what is enough sleep like for you, for somebody that's 12 years old?
Well, I have to wake up at 6 o'clock in the mornings to go to school, so going to bed.
I'd say you get about 9 hours of sleep. She probably does.
9? Yeah. Okay. And then, so
in situations, like they had their soccer tournament last weekend, so she played soccer all weekend, and their coach made their practice optional on Monday. She didn't go because we just know she needs the rest to recuperate, or she's not in a good place. So we try to prioritize that as much as possible.
And are you okay with that, Natalie? Or sometimes are you like, oh, I wish I could be like these other kids that could just look like that? Actually, they're not really like that. They just look like they're pushing it, burning the candle at both ends.
Yeah, I sometimes like I feel like if I'm explain it.
Just try.
I don't.
And you can say exactly how you feel. You don't have to say. We're not expecting you to say anything in particular.
But like, I don't know how to say what I was gonna say.
Okay, that's fine.
You're normal.
Yeah, I wish I could like just do what other kids could do, so I wouldn't have to just like go through not getting to do it. So.
Right.
There have been a couple times we've tested it out. There was a camping trip a few years ago where we divided up the food, and someone else brought something that was gluten, and she ended up eating it, and she was sleepwalking that night in the camper.
Really?
Or we've gone out of town for the weekend, and this has been quite a while ago, and just been like, let's just roll the dice and see. And by the end of the weekend, she was an emotional basket case. We're like, okay, that didn't work. We're not doing that again. So we've tested and tried a couple of times to see, because you can heal leaky gut, and also she's just sensitive to certain things.
Right.
So
I think, like, just so you know, Natalie, I do, because I think kids, they want to, just go and eat the cupcake, or have the, go to Starbucks and get the Frappuccino with 56 grams of sugar. I just looked it up today. I was like, and I understand that. I really do. But I think I think it takes time so you have to remember, like, you just started working on your health, 3 years ago, or was it 3 years ago?
4.
Going on 4, and that's where I'm at right now at 4 years. And I think it takes time because you had problems like from the get-go. So I think that like as time goes on, like I can have like something and I don't get that ill from it, but if I have it twice or 3 times, then it becomes a problem. So it's like, okay, I can maybe eat this once, but I can't eat it for 3 days in a row, but and I don't think it's really healthy for anybody to eat it 3 days in a row. I mean, that's the problem. I don't think anybody really has that ability to fend that off and stay healthy eating that for every single day. So but I do think that as we heal, we become a little stronger, and you won't always be this physically sensitive. I don't think anyway, as you get stronger. And I mean, like, look at you already. You've come so far. So imagine in 4 more years, like when you're 16, you're going to be like, wow, but you, at that point in time, you may not even want to. You'd be like, why would I want to go to Starbucks? Because you'll have the health YouTube channel, and you'll have to like be an example for all the other kids.
Take care of her mom. And she's gotten very good about that. There have even been a couple times where I'm like, do you want to try some? She's like, no, I don't want to feel bad today.
Yeah.
So she makes the choice not to.
I hear you. I think you guys are doing awesome. And I mean, it's really a testament. It really, really is. So it's like, because I know that there are so many kids right now that are on medication. So that was another question I had for you, Natalie. Like, are you aware of like the other kids at school that are on medication?
I know a couple people that are on stuff just because like they were my friends or still are my friends that I know that do it, and they don't really like act any different. I would say like have like outbursts at school anyways.
Is it ADHD related
yeah,
stuff?
like anxiety and stress and stuff like that.
Okay. I was just curious. Are you aware, when you see other kids that aren't so healthy at school, do you ever think like, oh, that kid would really benefit if they were on the same diet I was on?
Yeah, sometimes.
You do? Really?
They listen really well. There have been a couple of situations where one of my oldest daughter's friends was diagnosed as type 1 diabetic a couple of years ago, and her mom texted me and she's like, I know you think Mariah doesn't listen to you, but she just schooled the carpool on the difference between type 1 and type 2. And earlier in the year, for one of her friends, she's like, Mommy, I think we need to buy a copy of Dr. Brogan's book and give it to her. And so she's aware.
Wow.
Looking at all of this in her environment too.
Yeah, and by the way, anybody listening, Dr. Brogan's book is A Mind of Your Own, and it pretty much sums it up, sums up some of the challenges, and I mean it kind of just outlines the whole program.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and also like tells a tale of, basically what kind of happened in our society and how things sort of fell apart or why they're falling apart.
Falling apart to fall back together.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
That's how I feel. So it's like, yes, totally. Like I fell apart. I didn't fall apart. I actually, at the very end, I fell together. That's what happened. It really did. And I always, like, sometimes I'm like, yeah, when I hit bottom, but really when I hit bottom, it was when everything started to actually come together. And it's like, wait a minute, I had it all wrong, like in the moment, Yeah. But okay, so you guys, it was I really feel honored talking to you today. It was really, really a pleasure. And I want everybody to know that Erin has a website. It's called Consciously Healthy.
That is the name of my business. Yes.
So it's Consciously. I put I put it on my it's a little screen of it here on the screen. ConsciouslyHealthy.com. And you can contact Erin over there. You they can reach you if they're interested in holistic health coaching. That you also are certified holistic health coach, correct?
Yes, I'm a certified holistic health coach, went through a transformational coaching method certification, and life coach as well.
Okay, so also subscribe to my channel and hit the like button, and let me know, leave any questions in the comments, and I'll try to get back to them. You guys, thank you so much.
Thank you, Rose. We love talking to you.
It's been a pleasure. Bye, Natalie. You're really
Bye. Have a great evening.
okay. Don't hang up.
Okay.
Okay, so are you guys there?
Yep, we're here. Yay!
Okay.